Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. This is a special screening of the new feature film Lost Girls in Love Hotels, directed by School of Cinematic Arts alumnus William Olsson. William is going to join us live from Sweden after the screening, so please stick around for that. The film runs about 97 minutes and it will be played directly here through the webinar, and then we'll go directly into the Q&A afterwards. If you'd like to ask a question, just place your question in the Q&A box in Zoom, and as we open it up to the audience, I'll invite anyone who would like to come over temporarily as a panelist to say hello and to ask your question to William directly. So if you're thinking about that, just make sure that your camera ready. You can also keep your video off and just turn on your microphone and ask your question at that point. Before we get started, William sent me a greeting from Sweden for me to share with you now. So I'm going to quickly let William say a couple words of hello, and then we'll get started with the movie.
Welcome. Thank you for joining the screening and Q&A of Lost Girls and Love Hotels this evening. It is a true pleasure to present the film to fellow alumni, students, and fans of USC Film School. I wish we could have all gathered at the Norris Theatre this evening for this, but instead, I'm here in Sweden on Zoom, and you are probably spread out all over the world. At any case, thanks for joining, and I will be happy to answer your questions after the film, and I hope you will enjoy the movie. Take care. See you later. Bye.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for sticking around for the Q&A. Just to give you a brief introduction to William Olsson, he's not just a filmmaker, but also the founder of Astrakhan Film AB. He was born and raised in Gothenburg, Sweden, and as I mentioned before, he's going to be joining us live from Sweden. After obtaining an MFA in film production from USC, he directed An American Affair, starring Gretchen Mol, followed by the Swedish language film Reliance, which won the Grand Jury Prize at the Shanghai Film Festival in 2013. His third feature as a director, Lost Girls in Love Hotels, was shot entirely on location in Tokyo. And as I mentioned, it just came out on video on demand platforms and digital platforms as of September 18th. So let's please welcome William Olsson. Hey, there he is.
Hi. Nice to...
Thanks so much for joining us in what must be, 6 in the morning?
It's about 6 in the morning, so it was an early morning, but definitely worth it. Thank you so much for everyone for sticking around for the Q&A. It's so exciting to show it to fellow students and alumni and fans of the film school.
Just before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone out there that if you wanted to ask a question, please type your question in the Q&A box on the bottom menu bar from Zoom, and then we'll call on you when we open it up to the audience. And if you'd like, we can move you over and turn on your video so that you can ask your question live. So William, tell us a little bit about discovering this novel, because it's, from what I was reading, there is drawing on the author's experiences of being in Japan herself. And I'm curious how you came across it in the first place.
So the way the project was introduced to me was through my producing partner, Lauren Mann, who I've known since a long time, and who was also the one that was instrumental in getting my Swedish feature Reliance off the ground. She had read about, they were trying to make a film of it in about 10 years, I guess, with Kate Bosworth in the role. Jean-Marc Vallée was going to direct it. but then it had never come through, and Relativity, who had the rights at that time, was in some bankruptcy proceedings. Anyway, we read about the project, and then I read the novel, and I completely fell in love with the novel, and I felt that this is a film I have to make. So we were trying to explore also where the rights had ended up, and it had reverted back to the novelist. And then it was a task of trying to find her. And ironically enough, we found that she had moved to Sweden. She's a Canadian author, but for reasons of love had ended up in Stockholm. So I managed to get in contact with her, and we went out for a dinner together, and I told her how much I loved her work and that I wanted to make a film out of it. And then she said that she would be delighted to, but under one condition, that this time around she wanted to write the adaptation. And I guess, there's some conventional wisdom that speaks against that, but to me it seemed fair also, because so much of it was from her own experience. And she also convinced me that the novel had been written long enough ago that she had some distance to it, and she realized that the film would also be different. So we agreed. And I think, that was probably the best decision I've ever made. We had a fantastic time adapting the screenplay together, me and Catherine, the writer, and then the two producers, Lauren and Lawrence. So that was a process which I guess took about a year or something like that. And at the same time, we got to know her, and we got to know her life, and it was just an incredible partnership. But yeah.
Were there any significant adaptation choices that she made, or that perhaps you or the producers made, that were particularly useful for making a cinematic interpretation of the book? Seeing as, there's so much that you can't always put into a screenplay that a novel sort of has more space for.
Yeah, and I think that was also the challenge, and partly also why I had fallen in love with the novel, because so much of in the novel is it's not completely that way, but a lot of it is very much a state of mind. As we sort of follow Margaret's thoughts and emotions and sort of the inner turmoil of her journey. And that was, of course, a challenge to adapt cinematically. But one that we were tackling as hard as we could. No, and I guess it's always, when you're adapting something, trying to externalize certain things. At the same time, I think also as a novelist, the way she wrote also ended up writing the screenplay was also partly like a novelist, which gave me more freedom also as a director in terms of, the use of sound and cinematography to try to capture an emotion and a mode, not only sort of spoken through actions. And then I guess the other challenge was also, and one that was a creative decision that lasted all the way up till the editing, was to relate to how much of Margaret's backstory we should relate. In the novel, there's quite a lot of it, as she goes back to her childhood memories in Canada, and in the end we decided to leave that out completely, because the more we we put in of it, the more you wanted that. And the other option would have been to put even more of it, and then it would have been a different film. So so we made that decision, which I'm happy about.
I'm curious if there were any times where, you had, I guess, a difference of opinion, not so much in the overall story, but in things like the amount of backstory, where you're making the film, but your screenwriter also wrote the novel. So when you're working with someone who has that much authorship over the work, what are some good ways in which you creatively resolve a difference?
Yeah. Ironically, I think that she was less protective of her work than I was. So we would often find ourselves sort of in the argument that I would argue to keep something that was in the novel that she wanted to take out. So in that sense, she was less defensive about her work than I was. And because I think she continuously sort of reminded herself that this was a different thing, and a different film. No, we didn't. As I remember, we didn't have a lot of conflict based on those things. It was always a discussion. I can't remember sort of a single point that we butted head. Usually, I guess what we were trying to do, and it helped also having the two producers in on that process, is if neither of us sort of felt happy with the way things were in a particular scene or a particular character, we would encourage ourselves to find a third way. That it didn't become about trying to win, the other party over, that we would try to find some third way. And the producers were really helpful in that too. And those were usually, the discussion points that we would bring up in our meetings with the producers. And then we would usually find some third way that was even more intriguing.
Had you been to Japan before?
I had. Not that much, but I had been there maybe about a week total, and that was, of course, it was part of the allure, of trying to make a film there. But it wasn't the primary reason by any means. I was the reason why I wanted to make it was because I was so. Margaret's journey responded so much to me, on a personal level. In my early 20s, before I went to film school, I lived in Berlin for quite some time, working at a youth hostel, and I didn't go way deep down as Margaret did, but had some somewhat similar experiences. So it brought all those memories back. That of course the opportunity to film something in such a locale was of course appealing. Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking, how evocative some of these locations are, and I'm curious to know what you had in your mind versus, when you start production in Tokyo, what sorts of things you're seeing with your location scout, how closely the sets wound up being to this vision that you had, and what, the descriptions of them in the book.
Yeah. Of course, love hotels comes to mind, and before I had been to Japan, but I had never visited a love hotel. And now I think I've probably seen all of Tokyo's love hotels, on the various location scouts. But the idea was very much also to not get caught in the sort of touristy parts of Tokyo that we've seen, in many films before. And that was, I remember our first location scout also, when they took us around, I was like, no, these are not the types of places I want to see. Take me out to some nondescript suburb, or whatever it could be, some train tracks in the suburb. So it was also an incredibly rewarding process to get to see all these places. And the idea, I think, from a filmmaking perspective, an inspiration was very much from Wong Kar-wai's Happy Together, how he sort of portrayed Buenos Aires through these two Hong Kong expats, where it's very much that type of stranger in a strange land, but where also the locale sort of speaks and tells so much about the characters' alienation and emotional struggle.
Tell us a little bit about working with Alexandra, because she's put together quite a significant amount of like commercial American blockbusters, and so this is a very different kind of film. I'm curious what sort of conversations you were thinking of with your casting director, if Alexandra was on board early. It's obviously a very sort of profound role and a performance that is not typical of her career in terms of the more commercial films that she's been making.
Yeah,
not a knock on any commercial cinema. I'm just saying it's a different, obviously a much different kind of production.
Absolutely. And we had Susan Shopmaker, the casting director, and we started off, before we started the process, we had some really long discussions about this. And we made one agreement also, that whoever was going to get the part had to audition. That there was no sort of going out with any offers without that. And I think, that's where it came from. Alexandra did an absolutely astonishing audition, and a beautiful interpretation of the character, and she really wanted to do it. And after some discussions with her, I was thrilled, and she was going to give it all. And I wasn't so I had seen her in other parts also, and obviously know that this was something different, but there was sort of enough of what she had done before also that convinced me that she could, and what I had seen in the room when she was auditioning for it.
I was particularly moved by the moment where her impending sort of murder rape, slightly ambiguous, but it's going in one of those two directions, leads her to sort of succumb to her despair, and it's such a strong, powerful moment of performance, and of course of the character arc. And I'm curious, when you are directing an actor to get to that extreme, sort of what are the ways in which you help an actor reach that emotional moment? Because I can imagine it's not something that you can just turn on and off, unless you're Julianne Moore. That there's probably a lot of preparation that needs to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That was obviously, I think, definitely the most difficult scene, on an acting level, for sure. I guess as director, if you do everything you can to make a scene like that as late in the shooting schedule as possible. I think it begins there. It's not a scene you would shoot on a first day. Then, and this was actually one of the scenes that I was trying in the audition room too. And I mean, Margaret goes through a myriad of emotions in that scene. It's sort of resisting, but then also giving in to some idea of dying. And then deciding to live. Those are sort of, the beats that it's going through, and I guess it doesn't. It doesn't get more serious than that. At the same time, you have the physicality of it, right? Of succumbing to the being tied up like that and not realizing what happened, and then struggling to get free. Yeah, and then of course, and then when you film it, to have time, and not to dwell, on the technical side of too much, and letting the actors do their work.
I noticed you had a Japanese casting director as well. Was that also including the English-speaking Japanese actors, or was that mostly for the other characters?
That was all the even the English-speaking Japanese characters. So she found Kazu for us, and we had a wonderful relationship. Me and Kay. Kay doesn't speak hardly a word of English, and then she has an assistant who's a filmmaker in her own means, called Tony, who's bilingual, who are translating. But we sort of immediately found some way of communicating, even if we weren't speaking the same language, in terms of what we were going after. And she was also in, sort of on the local auditions that, because I guess we were also perceiving acting the same way. But it was also quite an extensive process in Japan. And Kazu was, of course, hard to find someone that had, and I think Takehiro has an excellent ability to do that, which is sort of being, I guess, both hard and soft at the same time. That there's an incredibly hard shell in his personality, but then there's, but when you see through that, there's an incredible vulnerability, and to be able to let that shine through the camera lens. And we were also auditioning them, because we had casted Alexandra at that point, so we did some auditions together, and she was also heavily involved, in finding him.
Were you doing it on Zoom?
No, I think this was before Zoom, luckily.
No, I mean, were you actually flying her out to
Japan? Yeah.
Already there?
So she came out, I guess her first trip was probably about a month before production.
Okay.
And then, we had her read with our sort of finalists. So she was it was important to all of us, that would also be someone that she was comfortable and happy with. Yeah.
I was thinking, when you mentioned Wong Kar-wai earlier, that the bar and everything that's shot there really does echo, I feel like, a Wong Kar-wai film. And I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about finding that bar, um, you know, lighting it with those colors. I mean, I can't imagine that that's, you know, particularly easy because it's dark and it's colorful, but, you know, everyone's very well lit. So give us a day in the history of that set.
Yeah. The bar was, it was probably the hardest location to find. I think also that's where my memory of Japan, of being in these tiny bars that are all over Tokyo, that some of them, you know, can have places for 3 people. And it was important to get that intimate feeling, because you don't see a lot of these bars in the West, even if they exist. And it was also, you know, where me and the cinematographer did a lot of our talking about how we wanted the movie was, you know, we would be at these bars late at night, you know, in the pre-production. And then we finally found a wonderful little small bar where this would be perfect, you know, and we had sort of, me and the cinematographer had almost acted out each scene and what angles we were using. And then it was just a matter of, you know, how do we convince? Because a lot of these small bars also, the worker, the manager, and the owner is the same person. You know, it's one person that owns this bar, and he or she is there every day. But then, you know, our location person came and said that, oh, he's not really sure. You know, he'd love to do that, but he doesn't want to close the bar for these few days. He's wondering what the customers will say, and we were trying, and we were going there with tea, with small gifts. Please let us film there. And by the end, he said, no, I can't.
Oh no.
And then we found this other bar called Gari Gari, which ended up working perfectly.
Tell us, I mean, how did you even physically put a crew into a space like that?
Yeah. Well, Gari Gari, the bar that we ended up using is a little bit bigger than it looks. So from that perspective, actually, it worked better. I think it would have been almost impossible at the first bar we were doing. But the DP, Kenji, he was very much, I guess he was thrilled about the idea of using those restraints, you know, as a sort of creative means. And I mean, we had to do that. We were shooting with the Alexa Mini also, because I think, you know, in the bar also the normal Alexa would take up too much space, so that we could sort of squeeze it against the wall, literally. So, I mean, at some points, you know, there was hardly any space. But I think that helped captured that mood. And in terms of the design, you know, a lot of the things were already there when I found the bar, and then it was you know, dressing it to make it even more so what we wanted it to be, and a close collaboration between the production designer Arad, the DP Kenji, and me.
Tell us a little bit about that beautiful sequence with the rebirth in the temple. How complicated was it to actually, you know, sort of gain access to a space like that? And then how much of it recreated by you in a completely different location, or was it all actually shot in a temple?
We didn't get access, you know, so we had to build that. No, I think
it seemed perfect, which means it was the magic of cinema.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you thought it was at the real place. Catherine had written that in the screenplay about this place, you know, and I guess it was one thing in theory to read it on the page, and then, you know, our first location scout trip to Japan. We went there, and then, you know, when I experienced it for real, it was quite an existential experience. And I said, you know, we have to do this scene, and we put it a little extra weight on it, I think, you know, from that point in the screenplay. And it's at, you know, one of the major temples in Kyoto. So and the production service company just told us immediately, there's no way you're gonna film there. And the DP was also, I can't film there because, you know, that light is not strong enough to be able to capture, because it's like just a tiny little streak, and you see it because your eyes are so used to the darkness. So we had a picture of the stone, and then we built a copy of that, not in stone but in some other material, and then we put it in a studio, you know, where we had a wall that we were sort of sneaking around, which worked out beautifully. And the same with the staircase, we built that up, and then, you know, it's actually just light at the top, so you don't really see where you are, and then you combine that with that street, you know, when you're walking up to the temple, which was shot at the real place. So it's the magic of cinema, just like you said. But that moment was always very important to me, you know, and it took some time to figure out how we were going to do it physically. Yeah.
Well, I want to open up to the audience, but before we start taking any questions, I just want to ask, what was maybe the most complicated, difficult, unique, or different experience about shooting a film in Japan than your experiences making your other films?
Yeah. I mean, it was both. Filming in Japan was both a challenge and the most rewarding thing I've ever experienced from a filmmaking perspective. That the clash of sort of culture and making something together. The language was one issue. I mean, most of the crew didn't speak English, or they spoke very little English. But we somehow found a way to communicate. And some of the, like our art director, for example, he didn't speak English very well, but, you know, he would have an assistant / translator. And, you know, he was always communicating through his drawings. So it was beautiful to see how well that would work. And we were using a production service company called 21st City, which was excellent, which is run by an Australian woman called Georgina, who's fantastic if you ever want to film in Japan, that has lived there for 20-30 years, you know, so she's fluent in Japanese and Japanese culture and in the Western, so that felt, you know, like the right partner. But it was always a sense, I think, you know, that I was, you know, when I came home, even in pre-production, I always asked myself, I wonder how many toes on I stepped today without realizing it. And Japan, that has such a strong culture. And just to give you one example, I remember that when we came in the first few days, I guess I hadn't got a key to the production service office, and you know, I told, you know, the assistant, I need to go here to do some work on Saturday morning. Can you come and open up for me in the morning? And she said, sure. What time? And I said, 8 would be great. So then I come there on Saturday morning at 8, you know, and when I open the door, of course, you know, the whole Japanese team is there. I think, you know, I realized after it was also that she said, now, you know, the director is coming, you need to be there. And, you know, that was certainly not my intention. And there were a lot of these things. This was just one example. And I think the main thing is that in making a film in Japan also with the local film, they have a tendency to plan everything in incredible detail. So when we followed the script and the shooting order in that sense, it worked really great. Then, you know, at times we were changing things abruptly because we wanted to do something different. It could be sort of, no, me and the DP would decide, let's film that way instead, or with the actors we said, no, let's do it this way instead. Then it would get a little problematic.
I'm going to ask this only because I've seen 3 different questions come in about it. The different variations are, what was the significance of Kazu's finger being cut off? Did he lose his pinky because his bosses exacted a penalty for his saving Margaret, or did he self-amputate? And the last one was, I missed how Kazu had his finger cut off. What happened?
Yeah. As he says in the film, you know, cutting finger is for apology. It's so you'll remember what you've done. And we left it a little ambiguous on purpose. And I think it depends on who you ask, and also if you ask a Japanese person. Is it something was it self-inflicted, or was it a price he had to pay to leave that life? I guess that question is still up in there. I'm not sure I want to answer it.
Oh no, it's great. I mean, if it's intentionally meant to make you question it, then
yeah.
Congratulations, because it seems like a lot of people have been thinking about it.
Yeah, no, that's really nice to hear. And I think if you were asking Japanese people, they might have a different interpretation of it, also with the aspect of leaving sort of the Yakuza family on one hand, and then the more self-inflicted, was it something he did to himself for Margaret's sake? I will leave that question up in the air. Thank you for asking it, for noticing it. Yeah.
Okay, let's go out to some folks in the audience. Let's start by welcoming over John Mcmahon. And John, I'm just gonna move you over, and then you can turn on your video if you like. Oh, I almost renamed you instead of moving you over. There we go. And then after John, we'll go to Yuki Ma. John, do we have, oh, we don't, I guess we don't have John on our side yet. So, Yuki, I'll just move you over, and if John pops in, oh, actually, Yuki is not in the audience anymore. Okay, sorry. In that case, let's go to Coco Randolph. Coco, would you like to use your mic and video, or just your microphone?
Just mic, please.
Okay.
I'd like to say I really, really enjoyed the film, and I signed up last week, but I was so anxious. I streamed the film last Friday, and I can't stop thinking about it. I feel that you expertly portrayed the sense of despair and disconnect. And I really appreciate it. I just wanted to tell you that. And I've read some of the reviews that talk about the arc of the film. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts about something you might have changed, or your response to that criticism about the arc of the film.
Thank you, Coco, for the kind words. That means a lot to me. In regards to the criticism, I obviously read most of the things, but at the same time I try not to read it because people write all kinds of stuff. Some very well thought of, and some less so, I find, and some mean-spirited too. So I guess I made a decision also after my first film also that I didn't want to sort of get into a respond mode, that the film has to stand for itself. But to me, what you were describing there of your personal experience there is why I wanted to do this film, because it is about a young woman who discovers that she wants to live. I think sort of at the first arc, you know, she sort of numbs herself in escaping through all kinds of different means, and then she experiences love, and also the pain of love, but through the experience of love, she makes a decision to live, and that was always the most important element of the film to me. And I love that little part, you know, in the end, you know, where she sees Fumiko on the airplane, this air stewardess, that it's this realization for her also that she's made a difference, a positive difference in someone's life, and that is worth everything.
Well, I feel the portrayal of that was expertly done. It's not lost on me that the negative criticism comes from men, but her nuanced performance and the way you portrayed it really struck me. So thank you for your art. I really appreciated the film.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we got John back. So John, if you have access to your mic and camera, the floor is yours. Or maybe I can ask John.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
But sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great. So yeah, great film, totally unexpected. What it ended up being, I saw the preview and I was kind of braced for something else, but very, very moving film. Glad to have seen it tonight. I was curious though, you had mentioned that shooting in Japan was such a rewarding experience. Can you elaborate on that? What was rewarding about it?
Yeah. I think what was rewarding was sort of experiencing part of this fascinating culture firsthand. From everything, I think as a filmmaker, they have something also called the day before production, you gather in a temple and you get the blessing from a Shinto priest, or you bless the production in a kind of ancient ceremony. Obviously, film is not ancient, but this has been done for, you know, when you open a cafe or any type of business, and those type of experiences to be let in on the inside of that what was incredible to me. And first and foremost, also to be able to make a film together with people that you don't speak the same language as, that it worked, that you can do that. That was that was also a beautiful thing in itself. Yeah, I'll make another example also, of sort of these different things. There was one, we were filming something in a Love Hotel corridor. It's a scene, where Margaret bangs the door and tries to open the doors. And when she was banging one door, when we were filming, the door suddenly opened up and then it was shut immediately. And obviously there had been some kind of misunderstanding from a crew that was standing inside. And I was just, cut, it doesn't matter, you can come out now. But no one came out. And our Japanese AD was kind of like pushed me, William, let's go for a break. And then so this is, we have to let this person out without anyone seeing who it is. So the whole crew, everyone took a break, left that space, and then, that person could wander off without feeling humiliated. It sounds incredibly impractical, because it would have been better, I guess, to just say, I'm sorry, let's get on, and I wouldn't have. But it's those type of things that exposes you to this ancient culture in a beautiful way. Just a little silly example, perhaps.
And what was the deciding factor on the camera and format to use to shoot this film on?
The deciding factor for the Alexa Mini was that we had to have something that would squeeze in a tiny bar, literally. We wanted the smallest camera possible, and we also wanted something small that we could do some pirate filming on the streets without getting noticed, and something that would also capture light beautifully. And to me also, it was never a discussion about shooting it on film for real, because I wanted to be able to see, what we were filming. And the DP had previous experiences with the Alexa Mini and loved it. So that's why we picked it.
Do you think the experience of shooting this is going to influence you as a filmmaker moving forward?
Yeah, of course. I think I guess every film we do influences us in different ways. I've done, on a personal level, I've done 3 films. I've done one in the States and one in Sweden, and the Swedish one was very introspective. I shot it in the neighborhood I grew up, and then in Japan, then in a completely foreign culture. And I think it I guess it all have different challenges. But I wouldn't. I mean, I'd love to go back and film in Japan, but I'm not planning necessarily that, or I'm not planning that I'm gonna shoot another film there anytime soon.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Great film.
So I'm going to call on David Schlossberg next, but while I'm moving David over, there was a question from Robin about the word for longing for faraway places. I think she just wanted you to repeat it.
Fernweh. Like, shall I write it on the chat?
Oh, yes. And in the meantime...
That's a German word.
Perfect. Okay, David, it's all yours.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, great film. One of my favorite all-time movies is In the Realm of the Senses. And this, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but this movie kind of reminded me of it. It's also in Japan. It's, I guess, kind of I think a controversial classic. Was it intent? Are you familiar with that movie, or was this movie intended to have some, like, is it just in my head that the movies have a similar feel and maybe in a little bit more of a modern way? And then I was also curious if the thumbs, there's any connection with, you know, having body parts cut off there and with that other movie.
I have to admit I haven't seen it, the film.
Okay.
But I know about it. I'm sorry to, but I will. I look forward to putting it on my list for immediate viewing.
Yeah, it is very much a classic. Get the Cinematheque in Stockholm to
show it. Yeah.
COVID friendly 35mm print in your in whatever empty movie theater you can get into.
Yeah. And then, of course, the other connotation of the thumb is also that it's part of that the Yakuza world, and that's the significance of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Let's bring over Edward. So, Edward, I'm going to move you over.
Hey. Hello.
Hey, we can hear you.
Hey, William.
Hey, Edward. Good to see you.
So I remember your 2005 film, The Traveler. We were in 507 and 508 together.
Amazing.
I'm a huge fan of your reality fiction, and it seems like a very personal story. You know, you filmed it in a Berlin youth hostel, and I was just wondering if you had any plans of releasing that, you know, digitally. So.
Thank you, Edward. It's so nice to see you again. We went to film school together, and we've done many shorts together.
It's great to see how your even your 507s, your early films, they were very poetic, you know, and I love to see the progression of your visual style, especially the scene in the Love Hotel with just the shaft of light coming out of the curtain. It's very painterly. It's very beautiful. And I don't know, I guess if you also want to talk about some of your influences, European influences, I guess.
But it's interesting you mentioned, because I when I was in film school, I shot a film also in Berlin at a youth hostel. It was basically me with a camera doing the sound, the filming, everything. I went down with an actor, and then it was all a sort of a fusion of documentary and fiction, but in some sense, I guess, exploring the same world that Lost Girls takes place in, but in a different way, I guess. So I've always been, I guess, fascinated by traveling, you know, as a means to both escape, but also to find oneself. Thank you for that, Edward. So nice.
No, it's a great film. It's congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, we have an actor in the audience. If she's still here. Oh, actually, no. I'm so sorry. I forgot to call on her earlier. Okay, so I have another question about language, confirming that the word for happy, sad is kanashi shiawase. Did I get that right?
Let's see. Natsukeshi.
Natsukeshi. And also a question about if there is any more elaborate reasoning behind the tattoos that Kazu has on his body?
Yeah, I think first of all the tattoos also is part of the Yakuza identity. It's sort of this, you know, society within a society. So when you join these families, or when they grow up, they start to tattoo themselves in quite similar matter to what Kazu have. You know, the idea is also that you can wear a shirt and it's not going to be visible, but if you sit in a meeting or something and you want to show, you know, what you are, you can unbutton a couple of buttons and people will see that you are a Yakuza. So that was part of that culture, that he had to have these tattoos, and then of course with his design was a very elaborate process with the production designer and the tattoo artist. You know, from everything, you know, what type of flower patterns should he have? We ended up using chrysanthemums, which is sort of associated to death in a way. And then on his back, you don't really see that in the film so well. You would have to look incredibly close. Is also a depiction of an octopus and a crow engulfed in some kind of fight, where it's like different sides of his personality and in relationship also Margaret's personality, sort of fighting for dominance over that person. So there's a long story behind it, and production wise it was quite tricky. We had to sort of airbrush it on which took, for those scenes, you know, when he had the full tattoos, took about 4 hours. So he would basically have to show up to set in the middle of the night and then get airbrushed for 4 hours before we started filming. But then, of course, when we had, you know, the regular scenes, he didn't need to. But I think it also helped him to get into character, you know, of seeing himself with all this in the mirror.
Okay, so we have one last audience question. Oh, actually, I said that I would call on her and then she disappeared. I'm so sorry. People were way more excited to be on camera at the beginning of the pandemic. I think they're over it. Like, you can ask my question out loud, but don't make me turn my camera on. So I just want to wrap up then with learning a little bit about your digital release and how people have access to it and how that's been going.
Yeah, so we released it this Friday in the US on you know, video on demand for rental and buy on the various internet platforms and cable TV. We haven't got any numbers in for cable yet, you know, and the internet sites are also preliminary, and it's still a little too early to tell. But yeah, originally I had always thought of this as premiering in a cinema, and I think what I actually miss the most is sort of, I think, you know, seeing it in a cinema with people that worked on it is kind of the perfect closure of making a film too. So I miss that sense of reuniting with the key people that were involved, screening it and celebrate it. But apart from that, I mean, I find myself also, you know, seeing most films digitally, and it works beautifully. So I have no sort of personal problems with that it hasn't been released in a cinema, even though it would have been nice. So we, even as this pandemic started, we made a pretty early decision that, you know, we're gonna go digital for this, because we have no idea how long this whole pandemic is going to last. And yeah, we'll see.
It might be interesting to see how the effect that the digital release then has on a potential theatrical down the line. You know, if there is sort of generated interest from having had sort of a word of mouth on the digital version, and the film obviously feeling very cinematic and people wanting that experience when they have the opportunity again.
I mean, the film looks stunning in a theater because we color graded and mixed for a theater. And it looks stunning, you know, and when you see it on that format. So of course it's more of an audiovisual experience that way.
Well, we did get one last late question from Will Hess, who I'll move over, and then I think this will be the last one. Okay, Will, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hey, how are you?
Good to see you.
That's I'm just seeing that image behind me. That's odd. I thought that was going to be my my living room back here. Anyway, how you doing? Good job on the film. Congratulations. And I was just curious more about like if you could talk about the logistics of, you know, balancing a family with a multinational film career. Since, you know, the trajectory, let's say, since you've left USC. I got out, by the way, 2004, I guess the year before you. I don't even, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Not to mention the amazing feat of having 3 kids at home during a Skype interview or a Zoom interview, and none of them have tried to burst into the room.
I think it's still early here. It's 6:40, so I think it's time to go wake them up soon. But no, and that was actually, you know, on a private level, that was also quite beautiful, because when we were discussing this, my wife and I, you know, that I was going to be in Japan for, you know, at least 3-4 months filming this. We made a decision, and we were lucky enough to be able to do that she said, well, why don't I take a leave of absence, you know, from my work, and we all go together.
Wow.
So it ended up working out that way, and our kids that were, you know,
a big
10, 8 and 6 and 5 at the time, they came with us, and then we were able to put them in an English language school. So they were all staying, we were all staying together throughout I guess the fall term for the kids, and then we actually, after we had wrapped filming by Christmas, we stayed another month with the family, just sort of enjoying. So on a personal level, it ended up great. Obviously, I was working, you know, the whole time, so I didn't see much of them, you know, up until we wrapped shooting. But
yeah,
but they all had their own Japanese adventure, I guess.
That's great. It's a team effort.
A team effort, you know, and they got to learn a little Japanese too.
Nice. Maybe they'll be future filmmakers.
I don't know. Guess we'll see about that.
All right. Well, good job. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing.
And William. Oh shoot! I just I moved the wrong Will over. I'm so sorry. I swear that's the only time I've ever sent the guest over to the to the audience side. But you're both named William. So I just wanted to thank you so much for coming to us live from halfway across the world, and congratulations on the movie and for getting it out there even in such an unusual time, and still making the time to hang out with your fellow Trojans.
No, thank you guys so much. Thanks for sticking around to watch the film and for the Q&A. Obviously, it would have been great to do it live, but this also works beautifully, and I'm sure I'm not the only one not in LA. So this has been wonderful. Thank you.
Well, come visit us soon as soon as it's safe to do so.
Absolutely.
Good night, and good night to everyone else out there.
Thank you. Bye.